BYU falls to the Houston Cougars 77-66 here at the Marriott Center. Mitch Harper with KSL Sports, host of the Cougar Tracks podcast and Cougar Sports Saturday on KSL NewsRadio. It was a tough game for BYU. It was one of those games where I thought the fight, the competitiveness, the discipline from BYU was much better than what we saw against Oklahoma State on Wednesday night, in a game where BYU on Wednesday gave up 99 points, but still BYU couldn't finish the job. It was once again where BYU goes up against an elite team, and they're close, but they can't get the job done. And it's becoming a glaring issue with this BYU team as they now drop their fourth consecutive game. It's the first time since BYU joined the Big 12 that the Cougars are on a four-game slide. It's the first four-game losing streak since 2023. That was the last year BYU was in the West Coast Conference. But again, Houston, they get it done, 77-66. Houston remains undefeated against BYU since these two joined the Big 12, 4-0. BYU hasn't beat Houston. Kind of weird nugget here. They haven't beat Houston in the Marriott Center ever. They haven't beat Houston in Provo since 1965. Kelvin Sampson continues to pile up wins. He's 3-0 as Houston's head coach in this building, and Houston kind of reverted to the Houston of old in this game. This is a Houston team that's got more offensive firepower than the ones we've seen in the past, but it was Houston of old showing up, 50-50 balls, offensive rebounds, getting second chances. They were great late in this game, and they found a way to extend possessions and eat up clock and maximize their opportunities. Kingston Fleming's the star freshman who's going to be a top 5 NBA draft pick, 19 points, 8 of 18 from the field. He was really good tonight. A.J. DeBonsa for BYU was outstanding, 28 points on only 14 shots. A.J. is that man, 5 rebounds, 4 assists for A.J. But BYU is clearly in a slump, and this team struggles right now to get over the hump. And the big three for BYU combined for 52 points, 45 between A.J. and Rob Wright. Only 7 points for Richie Saunders in this game, which credit to Houston. I mean, I thought Emmanuel Sharp, Milo Suzan, they did a fantastic job of always accounting for Richie Saunders. And keep in mind, too, Houston was in a lot of foul trouble. Like JoJo Tugler, he dealt with 4 fouls. He was out in stretches of this game. They turned to Khalifa Sacco for a lot, and I thought he had a pretty nice game for Houston. He was someone that Coach Kelvin Sampson was talking about earlier in the week, and he showed up in a big way for the Cougars. But Richie Saunders only getting 7 points, you tell me that. BYU's not going to win many games when he only goes off for 7. So well done by Houston to slow down Richie Saunders. You're not going to slow down AJ. He's always going to get his. But if you take away one of the big three, much more challenging for BYU to get a victory. In the second half, BYU did have a 3-point lead. They started the game off with a 2-0 lead, and in the first half, it was kind of going back and forth. There were moments where they got it close, but Houston always had an advantage. But BYU had a 3-point lead in the second half, and it felt like the momentum was building in BYU's favor. And I kind of think back to, it was before the under 12 media timeout in the second half. BYU's up 51-48. Rob Wright knocks down the 3. Marriott Center is on their feet. And this crowd, I thought, was energized. It was a late tip, 8:30 p.m., but this crowd was trying to create some momentum for this BYU team. They would get on their feet time and time again, but it felt like Houston, like Arizona a couple weeks ago, always had an answer for any sort of spot where BYU looked to have some momentum. But BYU was up 51-48 after the Rob Wright 3. I thought Chris Senack, he hits a mid-range bucket, 51-50. But what was of note there, BYU's got the possession and a lead. It's the first time they had that. And so Senack, his shot, and he was really good. I thought he had some big buckets, 16 points for Senack, the heralded freshman from Link Academy. But again, BYU's got the lead. A.J. DeBonsa then nearly has a poster on Khalifa and on Sacco, and instead he has to go to the foul line for 2. He got fouled on the shot, on the attempt. It was going to be a posterizing dunk. It was going to be one that was going to be talked about for the entire weekend. Even on Super Bowl weekend, everyone would have been talking about AJ's dunk over Sacco. Instead, he goes to the foul line. and he misses one of two. And it was a bad night shooting the free throws for BYU, who finished as a team 16 of 28 in this game. AJ goes 1 of 2 from the foul line. So BYU is then only up 52-50. They get a stop. Keita, he then gets an opportunity to go to the foul line. Remember, he threw the ball off of Uzan, but he got fouled. But he was kind of energized and hyped. BYU's bench is feeling it. You're starting to sense the momentum going BYU's favor. Keita then misses the front end. Flemings, on the other end, hits a mid-range bucket. And instead of being up around 5, BYU is tied with Houston at the under 12 media timeout. I thought that was a key moment in a stretch where BYU couldn't capitalize on the toughness of Houston, always hanging around, making everything uncomfortable for BYU, kind of reared its ugly face right in that spot. There were other moments in the game in the second half. I thought Bidu Ahmed, he's got to be stronger with the ball. AJ DeBonsa fed him perfectly in the paint for what would have been a big slam dunk, and Bidu loses the ball. It goes out of bounds. Initially, it was ruled to be BYU possession. Houston challenges it, and then the play got reversed, and it was Houston ball. And so then I think a couple of possessions later, maybe the next possession, Bidu Ahmed had a block on Flemings, and Houston was irate. They thought it was a goaltending. Would have been better off to have it as a goaltending because Houston maintains possession, and then it results in an and one. Flemings goes the line, and suddenly Houston's up 5, and they're starting to build the momentum, and they never really look back. BYU always kind of got within striking distance at times, but Houston always had an answer. Keita had a tough night. BYU's bigs in general had a big night, and even Kevin Young pointed to that in the postgame press conference. Keita, he had an air ball. Richie Saunders comes up with an offensive rebound. And again, those are always coveted against Houston because they are so good at crashing the glass. They just have an art form, the way that Houston goes about their business. Richie gets an offensive board. He finds a wide open Keita, and he airballs it. Inexcusable. You have got to hit that bucket. That was a deflating moment in the building. You could just kind of feel a little bit of the air come out of the Marriott Center when Keita airballed that shot. After the under 8, big block from Keita, though. They responded, had a big moment, and then BYU's down 4 in that spot after the block shot that he had. Moo Davis then turns the ball over without BYU even getting a shot, about 7:13 to go, and that was a deflating moment, too. A couple possessions later, Flemings had another and one opportunity to put Houston up by 6, and then that led to a bunch of BYU fans in the student section chanting, "Ref, you suck." Those chants were happening. There were nothing controversial. No religion mentioned like what we heard in Stillwater, but instead it was "Ref, you suck" chants. Second chance opportunities down late. That highlighted Houston's effort. I mean, they were all over the place. Tugler, Sinak, they were fantastic on the glass, and Sacco as well. And suddenly, before you could really blink, BYU, even though they felt like they're right there, they're suddenly down 8 at the final media timeout. And, BYU gets it down to 5 after a big AJ DeBonsa 3. And you're feeling like, okay, they're going to make another run at this thing because we saw it against Arizona. This team is never out. Emmanuel Sharp then counters with a big 3 that snuck in. It rolled in, puts Houston back up 8, and after that point, it was pretty much all Cougs in Houston coming away with the win, and that's a big win for Houston. Even Kelvin Sampson, in the postgame press conference, he highlighted how big it is and really complimented BYU's atmosphere. And I think every coach that comes into this building pretty much does, but that's a big win for Houston. They're 21-2. They're 9-1 in Big 12 play. They know who they are. They know their identity. Like Uzan and Emmanuel Sharp, they're still the heart and soul of Houston. BYU, on the other hand, as AJ DeBonsa kind of said, they're looking for their identity again. Like they thought that resolve, that resilience to always fight and battle. We saw that, but they're lacking an identity that can give them the confidence that when those moments come up, they can finish the job. And that's a little bit concerning at this late in the season, that you don't have that confidence that you can finish a game and go win it. Because any game in the March Madness, it's going to be tight, and it's going to be a very good opponent you're facing, And especially with the way that BYU's falling on the seed lines, those tough opponents could be right out of the gates in round one. Tricky spot right now for BYU, who again's on a 4-game losing streak and looking to respond, and it doesn't get any easier. Tuesday night, they'll go to Waco and face a Baylor team that you know is going to be energized to welcome back Rob Wright back to Foster Pavilion. Rob Wright was asked about his return to Waco and kind of downplayed it completely and just treated it like it's going to be another game, but obviously it's not going to be. Baylor's going to be energized, and I thought Baylor looked pretty good today in a hostile environment in Ames against Iowa State. Iowa State kind of, stretched it out, I think, to about 15-point lead, and then Baylor made a late run, but for the most part, they were very competitive with Iowa State throughout that game for the first 30 minutes. Then Iowa State pulled away, and then Baylor made a late run. So Baylor's capable, and they've got their own big three as well. So this could quickly turn to a 5-game skid. I think BYU, at a minimum, is going to get a win next Saturday against Colorado, who's a freshman-heavy team. They're pretty good, though. I mean, they're competitive. They'll battle. But I think that's a game BYU should win, and that'll be Jimmer Fredette Day. But still, I mean, you got Arizona on the horizon. You got Iowa State. I mean, this was an important spot to get a win, and it's tough to get a must-win spot against Houston, who's only lost 5 games in this conference since joining the league. But that's the predicament BYU's put themselves in. And what was also, I think, deflating a little bit, too, was the fact that BYU gives up 99 earlier this week against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State couldn't even score 50 against Arizona. Does that highlight a little bit of the gap between BYU and a top echelon team like Arizona? Maybe. I don't know. BYU currently is 8th in the Big 12 standings right now. Got room to climb, but it's the tough schedule ahead. That's the gauntlet that is the Big 12 Conference. I did like the fight, though, I think, from this BYU team. I thought they were a lot more disciplined tonight with their offensive sets. Only 6 turnovers. And against Houston, that's noteworthy. BYU came into this game 14th in Big 12 play in turnovers. Houston has a +7 turnover margin against opponents in league play, only +2 in this one. That's a manageable turnover effort. But like I said, that turnover I thought with the 7-minute mark from Moo Davis, I thought that one was big for BYU. And then you could even say that missed air ball from Keita, that kind of felt like a turnover, even though it doesn't result in the box score as a turnover. But only 6 turnovers, you'll take that if you're Kevin Young. Other stats from this game, 8 of 22 from 3, 36%. Kingston, Flemings, and Houston, they go 7 of 20 as a team, 35%. Coach Kelvin Sampson said that, Kingston Flemings, BYU was letting him shoot threes. He finished 0 of 3 from beyond the arc tonight. He then said, hey, start shooting shots. We want you to shoot. That's in the paint, mid-range. And he was feasting on those, again, going 8 of 18 throughout the entire game tonight against BYU, 8 of 15. He's outstanding talent. I mean, him and AJ are going to be in the top 5 of the NBA draft next June. A fantastic player is Flemings. He is a special, special talent. Other numbers from BYU and Houston tonight. Bench points, Houston 10, BYU 5. The bench points for the Cougars all came from Bidu Ahmed. 5 points for him in this game. But he needed more. Him and Keba Keita. I thought there was not enough production. There were opportunities for the bigs from BYU to produce more. They didn't capitalize in those spots. Moo Davis, who's been kind of a hot topic for Cougar fans. Should he come off the bench? Should they change up the starting lineup? Moo Davis goes 5 points, 2 of 9 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. Moo has got to hit the threes because, I'd have to go back and watch this game, but how many of those were wide open? Moo had opportunities. Again, AJ is an elite passer. Same with Rob Wright. They will find the open guy. It's very rare when those guys miss an open shooter. You got to knock him down, though, and that is not going to be good enough, 1 of 7. Moo's going to be the one guy every single night that he's going to give out 4 or 5 wide open three-point attempts. You got to hit him. He's not doing that enough, and the thing is like at this point, we're at February 8th now. It's kind of who you are as a team at this point. Are they really going to reinvent the wheel suddenly, and we're going to see different outputs from these guys? I don't know. We shall see going forward for BYU. I think that's my cue to wrap this thing up as the lights go off here at the Marriott Center. That'll wrap it up Houston takes down BYU 77-66. Next up for BYU, Tuesday night in Waco against the Baylor Bears. We'll be back on Monday with another installment of Cougar Tracks here on KSLSports.com. Check out all my work on the KSL Sports app and KSLSports.com.